Here we are back to Brighty of the Grand Canyon. It's raining out here and thunder. And it's Brighty B.A. See the picture there? Okay. He wheeled almost colliding with a white mule, and above the mule's face, looking between his ears, were the twinkling eyes of Uncle Jimmy Owen. Brighty's breath snortled. He pawed and pranced at the men on the mule back, laughingly herd on him until the whole little company was in among the cottonwoods away from the roar of the river. Uncle Jim swung a leg over his mule's head and slid out of his saddle. He went to Brighty and stood eye to eye with him. "Our whole canyon's changing, feller." His fingers worked gently on Brighty's mane. "Old-timer wouldn't like this new-fangled bridge. Traffic coming and going, folks poking and prying into his life." He turned to a big-built man sitting on a big horse. "Excuse me, Mr. Teddy," he said, "for harking to the past. Sure sign I'm getting old, ain't it?" Theodore Roosevelt, remember he was the president once, smiled, flashing wide-set teeth. "It's a natural feeling, Jim. We all buck change the way a mule bucks a strange load." He dismounted, then glanced in Brighty's direction. "Isn't that the same fellow?" He broke off his sentence in the middle. "Of course it is. Brighty. You probably don't remember me, but I'll never forget the day that wild cougar leaped on your back." Uncle Jim elbowed Brighty's neck. Brighty's head gave a nod as if he remembered too. "Well, by George," Mr. Roosevelt laughed. He turned to the other men who were gathering around. "Gentlemen," he said, "I'd like you to meet Bright Angel, the gamest burro in the world." At Uncle Jimmy's signal, Brighty nodded all around to the government officials, to the engineers, to the governor of Arizona, too. All the visitors bowed in mock dignity. They were feeling good after riding safely down the long trail. Now each took pride in tying his mule to a tree and pulling off the saddle without help from Uncle Jim. Then they limbered up, stretching to relieve the aching muscles. One by one, they went off in different directions as if the majesty of the canyon were a thing to worship alone. When they came back, they found Uncle Jim making camp in the small spot shut in by the cottonwood trees. He had a coffee simmering on a fire and sticks sharpened for broiling lion steaks and bread baking in a Dutch oven. The night wind flowed down the canyon and the men closed in around the fire while they ate their supper. Brighty joined them, his back against Uncle Jim, ready to accept any little handouts offered. After their meal, Theodore Roosevelt polished his spectacles and settled himself in enjoyment of the blazing fire. "Gentlemen," he said, "I've come a long way to dedicate the new bridge. You have asked me to be the first to cross it." He paused a moment, his eye looking back up the winding trail he had come. "But," he went on, "as I followed our guide down the 21 miles from the North Rim, I had time to do a little thinking." The others nodded as if their minds had been busy too. Mr. Roosevelt leaned forward, his eyes pleased and eager. "If it meets with your approval," he said, "I should like to have Jim Owen, a true frontiersman, dedicate the new bridge and be first to cross it." There was a little silence while the men looked at one another, then into the fire. The governor of Arizona was first to speak. If that is your wish, Mr. Roosevelt, I for one will be glad to honor it." The other men agreed. One said, "Uncle Jimmy has bagged over 300 mountain lions that were killing off the deer or threatening cattle and sheep. He's made the canyon safe for tourists. I'd like to make a motion that Jim Owen be the first to walk across our newly finished bridge, and so to dedicate it to the peoples of the world." "I second that motion," the governor said. Theodore Roosevelt smiled at Uncle Jim. "Well," the old man loosened his neckerchief as if he were choking him. Then he took off his hat and let the wind pick up what was left of his hair. "Mr. Teddy," he faltered, "it ain't as if I didn't want to, but my back is up again. A little old burro. What is a frontiersman? Ask any old-timey canyon man. Ask trappers and miners and prospectors. Ask the Mormon sheep herders and cattlemen. They'll all tell you, every last one of them. It's Brighty here who's the real frontiersman. 'Twas his hooves gouged out the trail which we all taken today. Ain't no engineer in the world could have built better." Brighty heard his name and wriggled closer, sighing and basking in the good feeling. "You're all big wheels in this here world," Uncle Jimmy smiled, looking around shyly. "And me and Brighty's just canyon fellers. But if you don't mind, gentlemen, I'd like for Brighty to be the first to cross the bridge to the other side, where he ain't never been." Theodore Roosevelt stretched his legs and got up grinning. To his delight, Brighty scrambled up too. They stood facing each other. "The bridge is intended for man and beast," he said. Why couldn't both of these frontiersmen be the first to cross? Uncle Jimmy on with Bright Angel at heel. There was nodding of heads as if each had thought up the idea on his own. The next morning the sun lay along the rim, but it was still dark in the canyon when the sleeping camps on either side of the river stirred to life. Two fires began glowing like eyes widespread. Brighty, on the north bank, was beside himself with happiness, running off to talk with the mules, then back to camp to smell the flapjacks browning and to nudge Uncle Jimmy to hurry and dish up. Theodore Roosevelt was down on his knees, splashing his face in the clear water of Bright Angel Creek. The other men were trying to give Uncle Jim a hand with the cooking, and he was humoring them. There was considerable talk for so early in the morning, and Brighty heard his name often. He heard it as he rolled in the sand, and he stopped rolling an instant, ears pricked. He heard it again as he munched his flapjacks, and his jaws stopped working to listen. When breakfast dishes were done, Uncle Jim put his clean, reddened hands on Brighty's neck and faced round to the group. "You know, gentlemen," he said, "if ever was a big day for a little old burro, this here's it. I've never been one to hamper wild critters with a lot of trappings, but seems like today he should be decked out some." An idea struck the chief engineer. He took off the sun helmet he was wearing. "I don't mind needing this. I won't be needing this," he said, "now the bridge is done." He spanned the distance between Brighty's ears with his hand, took out his knife, and cut 2 holes in the crown. "Here, Jim, you try it on him for size," he said when the holes were nice and round. "I've heard some jacks are tickly about their ears." Uncle Jim took his head. I'll have to ask you to please make them peepholes twice as big, feller. The roots of Brighty's ears is mighty stallard." While the engineer was working on his helmet, the geological survey man began to sketch on a piece of blue print paper. "That helmet," he chuckled, "needs a fitting emblem. I think wings to represent Bright Angel would be just the ticket." And with a few quick cuts, he produced a shapely pair. Word somehow flew to the camp across the river that Brighty was to take part in the dedication ceremonies, and a few men came over ahead of time. Danny the cook was one of them. He brought a pocket full of bright-colored tapes. "These came from around the hems," he said. "How about braiding them into Brighty's mane and tail?" The men were like boys, each trying to outdo the others. The chief packer made a flour water paste to stick the wings onto his helmet. "Paste them up high enough," he said, "and I'll paint B.A. under the wings with the leftover bridge paint." The surveyor broke out in laughter. "My brother had just graduated from college. He's got ears almost as big as Brighty's, and he signs his name with a B.A. after it. Wait till I tell him about this." Uncle Jim turned to the man. "What's it stand for?" "It means Bachelor of Arts." "Well, I'll be danged." Uncle Jim smiled as he combed Brighty's mane with his fingers. "If that don't fit Brighty, too. He's a bachelor all right, at least as fur as I know." Brighty yawned and stretched his body in a luxurious curve. He let the men crowd around as Uncle Jimmy braided the red and blue tapes into the stubby mane. There were no hobbles or pickets to hold him, no restraints whatever, and so he stayed in their midst, feeling happy and wanted. Well, there you go. That was that chapter. Back with more later. Bye.